record, Victoria. Because Victoria was about to say, you need to push record. And I never do it in time for the prayer. Okay, so welcome all. So we're studying the Apocrypha, and but I thought that first to gather, we would share. I think we ought to break into groups because we're so large. But what is your best 1 year into the pandemic Easter learning or revelation? 1 year into the pandemic, Easter learning or revelation. What was particularly life-giving or meaningful, or just a moment of real grace? And so we're going to break into groups here and talk about that for a few minutes, and we'll see you back. So this, if you haven't done breakout rooms, you just push you just say go to room or whatever it is, and you magically go there. It's
have a pop-up.
Yeah. Okay, doke. Here we go.
Okay.
Addie, you see where it is?
Yeah, my computer is not letting me get to it. Ugh. I love my computer. I love my computer. Okay, I got it's not letting me. Why are you not working on it? Please don't tell me I need a battery again. It won't let me get out.
There's not a deal that just says join room?
Yeah, it's in there, but my
Okay, well, I hope you had a chance to actually talk, everybody. It's really hard when you're, I mean, I'm in Never Never Land and y'all are at tables, and I can't get the vibe of the room because I don't know when y'all are done. So sorry about that. Anyway, welcome back. So just a little note for next week. We are hybrid. That means we have antlers on a bunny rabbit. So you're gonna, if you haven't heard the word hybrid regarding meeting till now, get used to it, because it's going to be a common word. And it's, so we'll be in person and on Zoom next week. So if you want to come to the church, we'll be there masked and in 312, 314, and make sure that you come to the north entrance to enter. So that's the one along North Star Road, not the school, not like we used to. Because of COVID, we can't go through the school at all. And then also, I need someone who will be a local Zoom host, which just means that you'll, like, if someone is chatting a question on Zoom, you'll let us know about it. You know, you'll send them into breakout rooms. I can teach you how to do that. It's not hard at all. Anyway, anyone up for that?
Technology.
You gotta be kidding.
I guess I'll give it a try. Are you talking about from home or in the room?
It would need to be in the room.
It'd be in the room. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess I can try it.
Okay, yeah, you'll be fine at it. It won't be hard at all.
It's the brave new world, Ann.
It's a brave new
Oh, John.
world, and it won't be
It calls for
perfect.
brave people. That's the catch. Is the brave.
Haven't most of us been fully vaccinated?
I have.
I am, I'm fully vaccinated.
Would really
Yeah.
help. That I think would give us a real sense of security for the in-person.
Get closer to your microphone,
I just
Susan.
said if we've been fully vaccinated, that would give us a sense of security for the in-person.
Yeah, how many people think that they will Zoom?
I will need
Oh.
to.
Mm-hmm,
I've got grand jury still.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, that sounds good.
So the Zoom link will be the same?
Yes, uh-huh.
Susan, I don't know that. I'm not sure it's actually legal to make that a requirement.
Oh, yeah, I
We
agree.
might
I
have to speak
understand.
to
I'm
that
just
from the
curious.
church standpoint, but I understand your concern. But I've had this come up in one other meeting recently, and that's a question whether an organization can say you can't come to this unless you're.
Yeah,
fully
I understand
vaccinated.
that.
You can.
I was just thinking that would give us, that if we feel that we're.
I agree.
that would-
I agree.
But I don't think you
Most of us
can,
are.
I don't think you can do that.
No.
I
No,
really
I
don't.
mean, yeah,
Yeah.
the point
Yeah.
is if people are comfortable because they've been vaccinated,
Right.
but yeah, it's whoever can come, so. Okay, well, thank you, Anne. That'll be great. It'll be a grand new adventure. And, okay, well, let's get to our study. Let's see. So the Apocrypha. I've always wondered about the Apocrypha, so I thought, oh, we ought to do a class on it.
And that'll cause you to have to study it, right?
Yes, it's great. Let's see. I am going to mute us. So feel free to unmute to talk. I'm not trying to shut you up. I'm just trying to make sure we don't have the background noise. But yeah, feel free to jump in with any questions. So the Apocrypha is the section of the Bible that is in between Old and New Testaments. And that's how it is in ours. It's not like that in every Bible, and it's not even like that in all of ours. There are, if you get the Apocrypha, it's a thicker Bible. So the whole deal about canonization, so canon is like a standard. So what is the standard scripture, and so the process of canonization is has come through the years, ever like from before Christ. There was canonization of picking the Hebrew texts that they were going to keep, and then in more formal ways once the church was in place. So the Reformation. Who can give us who can say something about what the Reformation is about?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about it since I used to teach that stuff.
Okay, we only have an hour and a half, Susan.
No, I don't have that long. It's been a while. It was beginning in the 1500s, and Martin Luther, the main character of the Reformation, when he posted the 95 Theses on the wall, on the door of the church. He was a monk himself. He didn't want to reform the church. Well, he was reforming the church, but he didn't want to move away from the church. He just wanted to have a discussion within the church about the things that he was concerned about, that they were teaching, indulgences and things like that, that were allowing people to buy their way out out of heaven, or into heaven rather. And it began to move it because the printing press had been developed, and his theses were printed and distributed, and people were reading them and talking about them, and some movement began all over Europe. There was Zwingli in another area of Europe, and some other leaders that began moving away from the church, and they were called protesters, and so we got Protestantism and new churches
And here we are.
that moved away from the Catholic teachings.
Yeah, here we are as Presbyterians, absolutely
That's the
reformed.
nutshell. That's the
Yeah.
nutshell.
Yes, thank you. That was really good. It's almost like you've taught that before. Okay. So, so we're going to be looking at the Reformation and its effect, but let's look at just the word apocrypha. So in Greek, it means hidden or secret. And originally it was talking about books that were considered too sacred to give to the masses. But then it became more of a negative connotation, and it was and so it was like whether or not these books were sacred enough. It kind of swapped its views. So what feelings do you have about the Apocrypha? What's your background on it, or what is your, like, where are you with all this weirdness of these new books that we don't know, and who the heck is Tobit?
I think there's probably a lot of different versions of it, but basically whoever's in power dictates what's in the books.
You know, that's a good, we're going to be looking into that. Good point. So the Apocrypha had become sort of this, it's like, these are questionable books. This section is questionable, but then they've also been called deuterocanonical. Okay, so that means the second canon, and we're going to talk about that. So the first canon is the Hebrew text. Okay, the Old Testament, these scrolls, they've put them together. So that's the original canon, and then also there was the Greek translation of the Hebrew text, and then the second is the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox canon, and so that was the early church canon. So we'll be looking at that. We got lots of different Bibles these days. There's the Jewish Bible, there's the Catholic Bible, there's the Eastern Orthodox Bible, there's the Protestant Bible. And sorry, wrong way. And so the Hebrew Bible is the Jewish Old Testament. That is the Jewish Bible. It's we'll be kind of looking at it a little bit more, but and the Hebrew Bible was translated, as big words, the Greek Septuagint, you may have heard of it, and the LXX is a Roman numeral 70. So it was 70, or they say 72, Jewish scholars that translated the Hebrew Bible. And so you'll see this LXX every once in a while, or the Septuagint, and that was it was all these scholars that scribes that are rewriting the Hebrew Bible in Greek, and so that was in Egypt under Pharaoh Ptolemy. So it was after Alexander the Great, and so when we hear that the New Testament, like New Testament writers are saying, well, in the, when they're quoting the Old Testament, they're quoting the Septuagint, because that was the Greek text that was all through that region, after Alexander the Great and all the Greek influence. So there's a thing called a codex. Now, it's not a codex. It's a codex, C-O-D-E-X. And it is a compilation of all the texts that they had found sacred. And so there's different ones that we have found. And they're named by where they came from. So Alexandria, Mount Sinai, I've seen this one, Codex Sinaiticus. The Vatican, Codex Aleppo, and some of them have some of the texts from the Apocrypha and some don't. So just suffice it to say that it's a messy process of how we got this Bible. So everybody's Bible has a different number of books. The Jews with the Hebrew text, it's the smallest because it's really just the Old Testament, and then Protestants, you take out the Apocrypha. The Catholics have 46, so it's all of the Apocrypha in there, but not as a section. It's all mixed in. And in Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, they have split some of the texts and added a couple more. So let's see. That's just some more info. So I want to go to this screen. So I'm going to stop this share. And we're just going to kind of peruse this thing. It's small text, but it's color coded. So I'm hoping that it's helpful. I want to go up. Okay, there we go. So we've got the Hebrew Bible, Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant. Everybody has the first 5 books. Then you get the prophets and the former and the latter, and then the writings in the Hebrew Bible. Orthodox, we're going to skip over Orthodox for a minute. Sorry, I gotta do this. Let's look at ours. So over here on the Protestant, we've got the law, first 5 books, everybody's got the same. Historical, which is, Samuel and Kings and Chronicles. And we kind of throw Esther in there and Ruth. And wisdom, right? The Job and Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and then all the prophets. So that's our whole Bible. You go to the Catholic Bible and you see thrown in, there's just more of them, right? So in the historical books, you've got Tobit and Judith, the longer version of Esther, 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Okay, so these are all the apocryphal texts that we grab and stick in the middle of ours. There's the wisdom books, so they put in there with ours. They have the Wisdom of Solomon and Sirach, which is they believe is the author of Ecclesiastes. And then they have a longer Lamentations. They have Baruch, which is a prophet, and then similar in the Orthodox. So I don't know if that helps any. What do you think? Okay, so in the Catholic Bible, that was the Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. That was the earliest Bibles, and those two split in 1000. Okay, and so that's when they started saying, well, ours can't be like theirs because they're like heretics. And so we had a little bit of that going on with us as well. So let's look at we had a nice overview of this from Susan, but we're gonna look a little deeper. So this is Martin Luther, and this is a picture of him. Somebody had their iPhone, and this is him tacking the 95 Theses up on the door at Wittenberg. And so this was his complaints against the Catholic Church for things that were not of Christ, like, as Susan said, selling forgiveness to pay for the new church, which if we had done that, we would have a lot better building than we've got right now at Canyon Creek. And as Susan said, the printing press was right then. Okay, and so the new Bible had a separate intertestamental section. So the whole deal of the Apocrypha is date-wise in between Old Testament and New Testament. It's the stuff that happened in that blank period of time that we say, well, what happened from like the Babylonian exile? You know, they finally got back and they could build a temple. What happened after that? Well, the Apocrypha tells us that. So Martin Luther thought that because, well, the Apocrypha ended up getting removed from the Reformed Bible. And so Jerome, who was a Hebrew scholar, I mean, he was a Christian, but a scholar of Hebrew texts, spent time in Israel, and he said that the Apocrypha should not be part of the Bible. And Augustine, who you might have heard of, a very, Presbyterian, pre-Presbyterian church father, Calvin had a lot of similar thoughts to Augustine, St. Augustine. He thought that we should keep them, even though they weren't in the original Hebrew. They have such a strong role in the early church tradition. So it was in the Bible all the way through. And so the Council of Carthage, I'm going to stop here. And so you remember, you may know in Acts, they talked about the church council. And they were trying to figure out whether or not they should circumcise the Gentiles. Okay. They had these church councils every however often. And it was figuring out how, how does it work that Jesus is fully human and fully man? I mean, what does that mean? How can Jesus be God when there's only one God? And what does it mean about the Spirit? And so all of that is what they worked out. And so that's the church councils. Am I going too fast? No. Am I going too slow? I'm putting too much in there. Okay. All right. So here we go again. So they had a Council of Carthage, and the Council of Carthage said we got to keep the Apocrypha in it. It's valid. It tells the history of the Jewish people in this time, and it needs to be in the Bible. Okay. So it was into the Catholic, well, it was in the church's Bible, and then ultimately that split, right? Church of the East and the Church of the West. So it's there. So when Luther started challenging the church, and when he and that whole movement, they said, well, who would you say, or what would you say the authority of the church was at that time? I think Susan said it.
It was an absolute situation. That was the church, period.
The church, period. And but who was the head of the church?
The Pope.
The Pope.
We'd have the Pope, and we also had the Holy Roman Emperor. He was pretty powerful at that time also.
Yes.
He's the one that actually indicted Martin Luther.
Yeah. So yeah, but religiously, I mean, like who should we follow? Who's going to, what's our basis of who tells us what the right way to think in our faith is, that would be the Pope. Okay. Well, and the Pope, in Martin Luther's view, was messing it up. And so they said, no, the authority needs to be scripture alone, sola scriptura. And that was one of the founding bases of the Reformed Church. So if it's not in the Bible, then it has no basis. And so you get rid of 5 of the 7 sacraments, and you get rid of, all the power that is in the Pope's hands, and you end up with a church like ours, where the pastor has no power, and the session has all the power, and the people have all the power, and very representative. So, so then we come up with a Protestant Bible. Okay, now this right here, that's Calvin. Hello, Calvin. He's very pointy. I think he very pointy features. And this is the Geneva Bible, and it's at SMU in Bridwell Library. One of them. So Geneva Bible, written in this time, so for the Reformation, and it says, while these books, the Apocrypha, were not received by a common consent to be read and expounded publicly in the church, and did not serve to prove any point of Christian religion, save insomuch as they had the consent of the other scriptures called canonical to confirm the same. Nonetheless, as books proceeding from godly men, they were received to be read for the advancement and furtherment of knowledge, of history, of the instruction of godly manners. And so they were in the Geneva Bible, but they were set aside as, oh, these are kind of iffy. Later in the English Civil War and the Westminster Confession of 1647, which was part of our formation as Presbyterian Church, they excluded the Apocrypha because it was just other human writings. Now, what I want to say is, first, let me see. Oh, I did that early. Okay. What I want to say is that that it's so interesting to see the human role in the canonization of the Bible and what's going on. And so it's like in 1000 AD, the East and the West churches split. And then all of a sudden they have to say, well, our Bible is going to have this and their Bible is going to have that. So it's not surprising that after the Reformation, when we Protestants were saying we have these differences from the Catholic Church, that we ended up saying these books don't belong. This is part of the difference. We are not that. And what did we do? We went back not to what was in the Septuagint, but what was in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, we went to sola scriptura, scriptural, on the very first basic thing. It was the Hebrew Bible and the earliest texts. And so we threw out what was important in the early church for, 1500 years. Oh, that's all. Because we are not, we're not like them. And that wasn't the original, like the Hebrew basis. So that's where the Apocrypha went in our Bible. So it's helpful to study. Any thoughts or comments or anything?
I think a lot of it had to do with the weight of everything. This is the one that's got it in it.
Yeah. And it's
A
cheaper.
lot lighter. This
It's
one's much
cheaper.
lighter.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, this is Janet Walters, I also think a lot of it has to do with technology. The fact that we have the printing press,
Oh,
which is
absolutely.
really revolutionary. Because before that, to print a Bible was a laborious, a handmade, painstakingly task, that would take, well over a year.
Mhm.
Write it, page by page. The printing press really was so revolutionary. And then in terms of then, the importance on teaching people to read, especially men. And then, women kind of got in on the fringes and learning to read.
Yeah. Yes, and a reformation technology wise, just like we've got today with the internet, right?
Mhm.
I mean, the printing press and the internet are, of the same ilk. Just blowing open life.
It wasn't just that either. There was also a kind of a feeling that once the printing press was able to print and became available to more people, there became a movement towards educating people as well. And so people could read the Bible for themselves. They didn't have to be told by the priest what
Right.
was in the Bible and what to believe. They could read it for themselves. And so the Protestant movement encouraged that, especially in Scotland. It's not coincidental that, we have a Scottish background. I mean, they really pushed education and educated pastors and all these kinds of things as a part of this movement that occurred.
Yeah. Yes, and our Presbyterian roots are exactly that. Yes, the grassroots power from the people, representative government that is the basis for our country's government is our.
A little
yeah.
historical aside there. A lot of
Yeah.
Presbyterians in the American Revolution and are part of that Constitution that was written that we live by, or we're supposed to live by.
Yeah. Yes, and so okay, any other thoughts before we go on?
Have you seen the Geneva Bible at SMU?
Uh-huh.
Can you call them up and I know you can't take it and flip through the pages, but can anybody see it?
Yeah, it's on display in the Bridwell at least it was 5
Yeah,
years ago.
I would check before I went, but that's
Yeah.
the kind I like to do.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Mhm. Okay.
Addie, let's see, you're muted. Addie, you're muted. Yeah. That's the word for the century. You're muted.
I grew up going to a Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade. And I was taught about what happened with Martin Luther and him fighting and saying, you can't sell these graces, you're doing something wrong. And he pointed out, I was taught that Martin Luther was bad.
Yeah.
And that, the only Bible, if I ever bought a Bible or had a Bible, it had to be the Jerusalem Bible because that was a Catholic Bible.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't believe what was in others. Okay, this is my Jerusalem Bible. It's a little worn, but I don't feel that way. I don't believe that way now. Because what's in the Bible is for all of us, whether it's a Hebrew Bible or what, or a Jerusalem Bible or a Geneva Bible, it's all giving us the same message.
Mm-hmm.
But as you're talking, I'm thinking I could remember the nuns. I had Franciscan nuns that taught me, and that was, well, Martin Luther King was absolutely wrong because he went against the Pope. Well, the Pope was the one that was selling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Martin Luther. Yeah.
It's
wow.
Do they teach out of the Apocrypha much, Addie?
As a kid, I couldn't tell you that. All I knew was that Martin Luther. Yeah, Martin Luther did the wrong thing because he questioned.
Of course.
Questioned the authority.
The authority. And to this day, you talk to anybody that is, that goes to the Catholic Church, or a priest that goes to the, they, we could not question what the Pope said.
Yeah,
Or what the
Question
priest said the Pope said?
yeah,
Yeah, the Pope said it, and that's
that's it.
the answer.
Yeah, and it also gets to be like gossip. The Pope said it, but the bishop said it, but the but the priest said it, and it's all changed since the Pope said it.
Never argue with a priest.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
You can
Mom,
argue with a pastor all day long.
Mom got in so much trouble when she said, "Why can't she argue with you?"
Oh man. So yeah, you asked, did they study the Apocrypha? They absolutely would, because it was all mixed in. It's just like they don't think of it as the Apocrypha. It's just, we saw how it was just in their historical books and books of wisdom and stuff.
The Catholic Bible is the one that's not censored by the Protestants.
Yes. Well, and I really think it's, the deal of kind of when something becomes polarized, when an argument becomes polarized, and we are not that, then that's when it's like things get dropped out. We're trying to differentiate ourselves. We don't want to have any association. We are based on the original Hebrew scriptures, so that is, we are right.
Yeah, we have to put on our uniform.
Yeah, we put on our uniform and our self-righteousness, and yeah, that too. Okay, well, let's go back to, so now let's look at what happened in the Apocrypha, in the time of these Bibles, okay, of these books of the Bible. So I want to look at it as waves of empires over Jerusalem. It's like first it's the Assyrians, and then they take Israel. Then the Babylonians take Judah. Then the Persians come in, and ultimately King Cyrus is a good guy and sent by God in the understanding of the Jews, because he encouraged them to rebuild the temple. Okay, so these waves of empires coming over them. So this is up to 331. Okay, Alexander the Great blasted Persia out of the water. It's a wave, and it was a little metaphor there. Blasted him out of the water in 331. So all of a sudden they're under this Greek empire. Okay, and from here to here is what the books of the Apocrypha cover. Okay, from the Greek Empire, which was, there's historical data in the Talmud, and also in Josephus' writing. We talked about him last week, I think. He was that Christian historian who kind of changed his identity to be Roman. I mean, he got in the Roman, on Roman coattails, so he could write history. Of course, he was after Christ. But we've got history written here. Let's see, Greek Empire splits to, that should be Ptolemy, Ptolemy in Egypt, and the Seleucids in the east. So in Syria and Asia Minor. So we got Alexander the Great, then it's Ptolemy in Egypt, and Seleucids in the east, and then the Seleucid Empire takes over. I mean, it's this one wave after the next. And I want to look in your book at page 15. I don't know if everybody has this. It's a really good, easy to access treatment of all this. But if you look in on page 15, the last paragraph here, during the period of the Seleucids and the Ptolemies, okay, many elite Jews sought to secure their future through assimilating to the dominant powers to some extent. Many learned Greek. Some took Greek names in order to be identified less with a conquered people. Some adapted more freely to Greek customs and expectations to the point that they no longer looked Jewish at all. In 175 BC, the high priest himself took the decisive step of refounding Jerusalem as a Greek city, enrolling like-minded Jews in its Senate, and setting up the institutions for a full-fledged Greek education and acculturation. This led to disastrous consequences: a brutal repression of Judaism and the rededication of the temple itself to foreign gods. So you can see here that that the church, okay, well, it's the synagogue and it's the Jewish, but it's the church of the time. So the church and the people of faith are trying to figure out, how do I be a Christian, a Jewish person, a faithful person in this world? Okay. I mean, if you kind of project what it would be like to be there, if we were there in the church, it's like the church of God is just got turned over to the Greek gods, just completely desecrated, right? So then reading on page 16, it also gave rise to the Maccabean revolt, the purification of the temple to be celebrated ever after in Hanukkah. Now, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the context of Hanukkah.
Yep.
And the establishing of an independent Jewish state under the Hasmonean dynasty. And so that's in 1st and 2nd Maccabees, okay? I just think that's a really, really good picture that he paints there of the difficulties of the Jews, of the faithful people of God in that time, because wave after wave comes, and then how do you deal with the culture around you? Any questions or thoughts?
It'd be very confusing for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and basically the Pope of the time buys in completely to the whole foreign God thing.
Yeah, it's, who do you believe? Who do you?
Completely sold out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so so here we are in this so in the Seleucid Empire, and then we have the Maccabean revolt, and that's when they went up against the Greek culture. The Seleucids, so this guy, I can't think of his name. Susan, what's his name? The guy for the Seleucid Empire. And Ptolemy, is it Seleucid? Is that his name? I can't remember. He was an under general under Alexander the Great. I mean, it's like they developed Ptolemy, and all those developed afterwards. And so these other empires started forming sub-empires to the Greek Empire. And so then you get your whole power structure that builds there. So there's the Maccabean revolt. Then you have this, the Hasmonean dynasty is an outcropping in Judah of its own leaders. So this is a period of time, or really a fairly long period of time, where Judah actually was its own, under its own power. Okay, so we've got that happened there, and then the Roman Empire hits, and Herod's there, and Jesus is born, and we lose the temple in 70. So all of this is, not all of this, from 331 BC to Christ's time is what the books of the Apocrypha cover. And it makes me think of the Six Flags over Texas. These are the 6 flags or 8 flags or 10 flags over Judah and over Jerusalem. And I don't think there are rides, but it was certainly a roller coaster. So, and so in the Apocrypha, we've got these stories, sort of like in our Bible, there's the continuation of Daniel. There's 2 other stories, Bel and the dragon, or Bel and the snake, as part of Daniel's apocalyptic literature. There's a story about Susanna, and then there's a prayer in there, which was right before going into the lion's den, I believe. And then there are these others that Tobit and Judith, which we'll find out about. And then Esther, which is the long version. We got the short version in ours. There's wisdom literature, and then there are histories. So that's that's what's there, and we'll be able to look at it a little bit more. So what? You know, I mean, is this just an intellectual, like historical lesson, and we can sit over here and not really, it doesn't apply to us at all? I don't think so. Because all the books of that time period are about how to be faithful in a multicultural situation, in a time when it's potentially unstable life around you and lots of outside world coming in. Okay. Yeah. So how to be faithful under another state, okay, which is not a Jewish state. Only in the Hasmonean time was it a Jewish state, its own government. Okay. How to be faithful in a multicultural environment, how to be faithful in a diaspora. The diaspora, does anybody know what I'm talking about when I talk about that?
Exile.
Exile, yes. A spread out, a sprinkling of, you know, it's like we're not all around the temple anymore. We're all spread out over who knows where. And so how do we be faithful when the temple or the church is not the central is not the central deal?
The original Trail of Tears.
Yeah. And so I didn't mean to push stop share there, but I'm coming back here, sorry. And so so from moving from what was supposedly a Christian nation, how to be faithful in a non-Christian nation, if we were ever a Christian nation, how to be faithful in a multicultural environment, how to be faithful in a diaspora when Christianity seems to be spread all over and no central, you know, I mean, we will still come to the church, but we won't all be there. Some of us will be on Zoom, you know. So I think it's very very applicable. Any comments on that before we go on?
Well, that's one of the reasons that the Jewish faith is so strictured, because they had to take it on the road. And that's a very telling thing about how it evolved in its orthodoxy.
Mm-hmm.
And the separateness, you know, not being part of the collective, but being separate.
Yeah.
Opened it up a little bit. The Reformed Jewish tradition opened it, but the Orthodox did not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of it goes right straight back to Seleucus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was I think originally it may have been a royal family within Alexander's sphere,
Mhm.
generals and so forth, and it evolved into the Seleucian Empire,
Yeah,
you know, but it's almost 300 years of empire there.
yes.
But the diaspora should be a good thing because look where you can go then, look who you can influence. So,
But you left home.
yeah, but so, it's the hindsight that you can see it as a good thing.
Well, all of our various backgrounds, everybody migrated. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
diaspora is more of an intact migration versus
Being blown out of the temple.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it definitely, the diaspora definitely spread the faith,
Yeah.
but it also, of course, they're coming from the Old Testament, like forming God's people, and we're not supposed to mix with others.
Yeah.
And so
that
we
core-
might get diluted.
Yeah, that core separateness is
Mhm.
keeps bouncing along with each version of everything.
Yeah,
Christianity
other-
involved in versions too.
absolutely. Any other thoughts about that? The diaspora, or about any comparisons between the Jews of the time that Apocrypha covers and where we are?
There's been a lot of evolving, you know.
Well, and I think that probably for most Jews, the diaspora was not considered a good thing, like you said, because they were away from the temple. But when you compare it to Christianity, it becomes a positive thing because of the journeys of Paul and the traveling that they did and the number of people that he reached because of that was a diaspora too, a different kind, but it was a similar thing, but it was viewed differently from a Christian perspective than it was from a Jewish perspective.
Yeah,
And from
The
the-
point.
connotates a religion sticking together, and immigration and migration just connotate rivers running together to form a bigger one.
Yeah, and the concern, of course, is that that some of the practices will be lost, and that the faith will be diluted, not diluted, but diluted. Yeah. So, okay. Well, one more thought before we break into groups. I want to bring up this book. If you have not read it, it is an important book for our time. Phyllis Tickle, who is a brilliant scholar and theologian, she just died recently. She wrote this, and it talks about how every 500 years, God's people, the faith, the structure of faith is reformed. And look at what, I mean, it is, to me, this is just an unbelievable broad view. She calls it a rummage sale, that every 500 years things start happening that start raveling the threads that hold the church or the temple together. And so look at this. So we've got Abraham gets the call and he leaves Ur for the promised land. Then Moses and the Exodus in 1500 BC. 1000 BC, the northern and the southern kingdoms of Israel, Judah split. Then the Babylonian exile, where the temple is obliterated, and people and the diaspora, completely upended what the church of the time knew of itself. Then here's Jesus. Okay. Then the Roman Empire, which completely, which the church was in bed with, don't forget, collapsed. Okay. And then the Great Schism, where the Church of the East and the Church of the West completely split, the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox. That was, the entire church of the world was one, quote unquote, and all of a sudden it's two. Okay, that's in 1000. In 1500, we've got the Protestant Reformation, and in 2000, here we are. And in each of these times, there was something, there was both something happening where something's falling apart, and there's also technology that leads to a greater,
You're okay. Be careful. You want to come over here with me?
One sec here. I can't find us. Let's see. I don't know what that was. Anyway, and so certainly in 1500, the printing press, at each point, technological advances also contributed to the upending. So this 500-year cycle, I just think it's brilliant that someone has seen it. But then at each point in time, there's a change in the authority, in the religious authority. Okay, at the earliest on, it was a covenant. Then it's the law, and then it's the kings, and then it's the prophets. Okay, the prophets are saying, no, wait, this is what faith is. God is actually as much in the, by the waters of Babylon as he was in a temple. And then there's Jesus, well, his own authority. Okay, then there's the collapse of the Roman Empire, and the church went to these underground, like there were a lot of monastic movements, and then the Pope gets into power, and that's cratered, that's raveled. Okay, Scripture, it's sola scriptura, it's completely inerrant text, and that is raveled. And it's interesting to see if there is such a movement of the Spirit and like connections across lines of faith that are spiritual connections that are happening in the world. It'll be interesting to see. And people say, yeah, but what about Jesus? If it's like the Spirit it's the Spirit, then what, like, and what are we going to lose? What do we lose? Yeah. So, okay. Any thoughts? Did you get what you came for? Yeah. So what exciting times. I think that, I do believe that the church is being reformed in a big way right now, and the internet is part of it, and the pandemic is part of it. 9/11 started it, and the whole world as one community. Yeah, just such a fun time to be alive.
Did her book go through 2000?
Yes.
Did it post-pandemic, or was
I didn't get to the pandemic because she died before that.
okay? So 9/11 is kind of her 2000.
Yeah, and the internet, the revolution of the world, and the fraying of the Scripture as sole authority, as an inerrant black and white deal, which is what we've been seeing, in the rise of some churches that hold on very tightly to the black and white of it, but only to the parts that they want to hold on to, and And then, you know, those trying to adapt and think through it, and understand. So, yeah, lots of excitement. So y'all ready for some group questions? They're easy. There's no test on any of this history. So, yeah. Okay. Any other comments before we go to the rooms? All right. See y'all in a bit. Make sure you let everybody talk. Okay, Heather, I need to assign you to a group. Hang on a second.
Sorry, I was so late.
Oh, that's okay. We're
I made
glad
it.
you're here.
Thank you.
Always glad you can make it. Okay.
Thanks.
Uh-huh. Welcome back. Did you have good discussion? Oh, good. The questions weren't too hard.
No.
Good. Okay. One quick share of the screen here. I meant to do this before we left, but so I do think that we're on an adventure, and that it is God alone. You know, scriptures alone, Pope alone, the covenant alone. No, it's God alone. And it is truly an adventure. And it might look a little bit like this. This is my son. I'm walking behind him as we climb Long's Peak. This is called the Narrows. And this is my husband. And I'm the one taking the picture behind him on another one of those things. So it's an adventure.
Ellen, you're doing those things while walking and flying?
Yeah.
No balance, you just, no hands?
No, well, I mean, I was holding on, I think.
No, you're holding on to the camera.
I was probably holding on to the rock too, and then to the rope. Yeah, but I do think that it's an adventurous time, and that it is God alone who's got us and has got his church, and yeah, exciting. Okay, so Lalois had to leave. She left us a chat that said that she had to do an infusion today. So any joys or concerns that we